Alright, we're good.
Okay.
We are good.
As soon as I receive the links, you can. I am on the chain now. Okay. Is everyone good? Alright. NFIB stabilities create structural incentives for national policymaking, legislative recommitment to federalism solves Gluck 13. Feds have to states and implementation estimates chronic federal policy costs so fancy federal outside the core of council lists as price actually increase national power. The courts is federal that's states over states roles of the Congress health form typifies the states not to say so the whole of it take over all the pay the records that might not otherwise occur. This term may occur major programs alliance implementation of the legislature curve all the federal nation there and ACA failures nebel collapses federals and conflicting federal smalls and uneven funding super 14. Financial action the federal government self and making hands policy power to the rational just like water programs of the federal conversation government desires responsibility to the feds to be raising capacity. These spirit capacity models target some because this way that tend to be unsealed necessary redefine the models and both the rational to be physical demands and spirit capacity nation models balance by rules of engagement physical policy all states aligned with physical policy chain belongs to nation. The AC rejection and use purchase and water fells displays and these bound device responsibility the overall spirit capacity the AC solely constitution and the rules of revelation spirit capacity model gives false because the tool of counter states physical law setting. The AC is more destabilized and digital state temperature or than point nuclear tech substitution. Entrenchment sets a federalist precedent congressional lawmaking the most politically salient issue super 14. These struggle the AC is very constitutional military law generation this proposed in language foreign countries all the balance the future will always saying far beyond policy and constitutional amendments the for the issue of over decades farming healthcare solid mirror backed up principle opportunity the constitutional revolution the political paradox and semis of our powers when for revolution change for why seals 2000 for balance far before the like private statutes of place amendments as a vehicle for tribal may has the most important state statute so the rare routine of our public statute for the public offense of present words statutes and scenario 1 is democracy cooperative federal instruction ensures minority power to touch no democratic legitimacy Gergen 14. National federal to cover language spaces solving cannot play more federal for federal information minorities as found by the lack of autonomy violates bureaucracy that the like governance built opposition for opposition thrive opposition used to mind that there is disagreement the fact matter structure fair below the democratic process will reach minorities like capable opposition policy opposition mind that reach minorities like capable of diversity touch on democratic legitimation labor truly focus on rights on government thing like democracy to be last and first and the death kneel law we have no means of change democratic institution reach minorities real power in terms of certainty reach minorities change rule federalism we know associated institution of the post national views large reputation ascending over some power mass focus on Nazi actors and specifically engagement solves the alternative is global nuclear war core 17. Democrat peace Nazis are from Russia, China, Offensive U.S. lines to go drugs, the action of Japan, Soviet Union, and loose alliance based on democracy alliance survived by Democrats out of peace, domestically assault our all credible spoken their expansion, destabilize nuclear bomb and nuclear war locus communists everywhere, CSCS, no-go, politics based on the exploitation of democracy is being challenged, democracy not guaranteed democracy, weaken the outcomes of our future outcomes, possibly increasing path dependent decisions, will affect the future democracy for centuries, possibly require comprehensive system of people who care about the futures of democratic and U.S. democracy is the greatest international stabilizer, the alternative is violent conflicts and nuclear war, EULA 17. There's given how John rabbit that they have rabbit the order and how my team rights and the human rights democracy, the U.S. private security names all institutions law to make a nuclear war 6 or 2 and must see the global democratic discourse society government the African civil by teachers not the actors. So the intention may be the stable democracy human rights is the only recourse of just secondary and civil confrontation is the developed just one always one underlying warranty legitimacy on the actors nuclear sites hacks and nuclear to come reality for nuclear weapons and international like every real political rights and nuclear warfare pass on democratic powers rights so good that between African dimension ideas fake cannot be further from the truth. No modern democracy is walking some democracy make better partners move towards agreement opposed to lower regimes for them in disarm but disarm and the fire peace they always the cost of anything wrong and nuclear authoritarian villages say climate change governments the warming all make international cooperation to the society and democracy is declining causes global instability and structural violence Klinsky 13. August off by revolution and democracy going to first world prize the country is held with same space democrat melted with season national slavery female on the bill of your top by the 60 and about 13 nation and more oppressive democracy has been a hybrid nation since the most comprehensive these days examine democracy will function government of both freedoms and level quality of democracy is the road of functioning democracy is the quality for Russian developments and their hollow other qualities of the government is part of the democracy impacts the city like democracy that billions of our private society democratic opportunity most of the private social political and freedoms authoritarian to be more willing to engage conflict freely use violence for populations democracy is made habits of our offense a little longer than some autocratic regimes in America is the global model of democracy solves conflict has 17. making progress to model transformers, extreme parties, no good their survival is threatened, they are the associated American, all these no unity, stability, and democracy, the institution for longer explained, it is not for the monster democracy, the only free running the other crisis of warfare and party terror, during authoritarian regimes. There's one more powerful than America being ever given might and strong democracy maintains global peace, Core 13. Empirical literature identifies pathways to the government's world peace of the state's equity, actually goals to maintain security, our conflict is more likely so to the security, includes ability to control territory, systemic affairs, social, includes ability to fight socialist or republicans. No government structures are directly affected, the capable of supporting peace, is more credible, legitimate, supportive peace when they're characterized, inclusive, so representative, necessary, accountability. Both are crucial to prevention of conflict, the often inclusive, maintain democracy, love inclusion, and maintaining capacity, like sensory imperial literature show evidence of the direct link to peace and state's capacity, the alternative to democracies, violence of wars, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. The best research confirms Core 13. Democrat peace applies in the United States, the Democrat government's strategies to armed operations are more looking at armed violence and evidence in Democrat peace in all United States is strong, appealing to democracy, much more probably needs to avoid level democracy. The only regimes that have United States of violence around China citizens unless they who are able to assess the preferences unless they have soldiers offering its citizens a real outlook for concern is likely to avoid civil conflict democracy unless they listen to advance political characters to correlate significant different casual also the strongest strategies of conflict severity. States want to balance against civil also like democracy around assembles mind-numbing data to understand the bad race comes to system through genocide, mass terrorization, approaching by the stark contrast between the behavior of talking democracies. Autocratic governments rarely slaughter their people, tens of millions of citizens, last genocide colonies directly associated with the absence of democracy. Lack of government is the most significant indicator of mass suppression. However, there's 126 states in internal war regime classified in fact, genocide violence as also other studies. The autocratic regime face-to-face and they were 3.5 times more likely to experience genocide violence than the democratic regime facing such failure. And scenario 2, secession, state implementation, federal policy compromises, forces compromise and institutionalizes federalism, Gherkin 17. Federalism is an extraordinary power source of progressive resistance against Trump and the source of compromise and change the local government and national gender, encourage local compromise use in the constant change after they change the land, but it does have no resources, state, local, and influence policy by refusing to partner with the Fed. Defeating state opposition costs physical resources and political capital power to the bureaucrats really confine the state federal dependence state creates enormous number of moderation and compromise. Federalism is a tool to change the politics, states with movement and marriage depend heavily on state sides, the staging efforts organization, but approximates equality norms now, and deep safety efforts to push other corporate state Washington state sides, immigration, police, and sentencing, health insurance, and living wage movement. The one policies that come from the small amount of top-down states versus policies that jeopardize rule of law, create incentives for moderation, the means of building charities going forward, and governance structures are modeled Rapkin 13. When forms of feeling focus on the of state, the larger trends are constitutional whole range policy practice and constitutional leaders may want to embrace their American powers as saying so these Americans say although not something individually the local economy is American, more so the local details of constitutional structure when we think about influence American constitution we think in the long term getting other countries who want to call a particular provision that from constitutional checks is not the ultimate prize and federalism institutionally checks suppress authoritarianism in Germany May 12. Populist forces call political structure into question, federal structure, building guarantee freedom, even when those in power lack sense of people, federal structure protect those undertaken subdivision of appeals, Germany's national jihadism, federalism protects their basic rights and illegal republics, different levels of government balance country, and the frustrated authoritarian leaders. How reliable systems check and balance may attract less interest in turning and support federalism. The answer national constitutional structure provisions sufficient and empirically solves secession law 9. Federalism minimizes violent conflicts through using structures aspect conflicts, power sharing, foster peace and plural societies. Federalism builds long-term peace solution that absence time and release success. Federalism may keep a country ever satisfied means that power so success needs to succeed. Where cultural autonomy is on fragmented countries succeed, ongoing violence by some war, violent conflicts, and secessionism causes extinction. Velasquez 14. And the autonomous school with that break up political separatism, they go exacerbate manage the plan of them, that's against all kinds of people, but that's not making the local columns to the El Dorado for organized crime jails, tax rates, and criminals, and governments no longer cope with pandemics, warming terror, unless finance, let's say, acquisition, microstates and separate to be even less capable after the war balkanization through separatism, increase probably third one, thus the plan. The United States federal government should establish natural health insurance administered by state governments and relevance of national agencies. Connor, I'm going to need more cards. Congress should give states money contingent on adherence to guidelines set by Congress back in 17. The defense of face the path must be listed to make Congress to policy budget wisely and encourage expansion of the states to make state authorities structure health markets because the Council of China rights American states of rare national own. One states of which all government state regular condition are stringent, the only one fears that only one way to federal mind based one they should change savings to the source on federalism tax and the recognize limits on we know Congress should place conditional money to be used as a possibility as state money based on restricted funds to make it difficult to access federalization way to be unfortunately like color forms states are front acting on policymakers who are balkan issues funds Congress establish guardrails for states concerning personal action requiring states federal money to be universal comprehensive portable health coverage all statutory kind of disability states to be applied as money create entitlement to health insurance. The entitlement to articulate high level generality implement against states to adopt a single prejudice states to be excised authority within poverty market Congress off the baseline while leaving the states to adopt all terms when they spend on prejudice for states to use or power of the state.
Go back to democracy.
Go back to democracy. Backsliding causes worse small votes of authoritarian capital to fill in GATT to 11. The kind of power team of probably major wars means that the victory democracy is faster return the nominal powers trying to resurrect Americans the great challenge to create authoritarian capitals maybe more viable democratic to shortly due to the power far off the China grows. There's process more antagonist relation and the century ideological rivalry calling intensified arms races.
Very good.
Connor will send that out.
I will send it right now.
Well, do you mind if we start?
Oh yeah, totally fine.
Okay. Ron Martin, Janice Lee. What did democracy do to stop the ethnic cleansing of these individuals?
So we would say that democracy in the United States is flawed right now because the federal government has way too much power following the NFIB
Sure, why is that
decision.
structure redeemable?
The structure we'd say is redeemable because the Gherkin evidence is actually fantastic on this question. It indicates when we move to a shift to cooperative federalism gives minorities more power and the ability to change things like policing and sentencing structures.
The
Reforms
Gherkin
have to
evidence
come
indicates
from
that state rights played in the resistance to Civil Rights Act and desegregation. Where do you think that anti-blackness has stopped in the status quo?
Yeah, Connor, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I do want to take this one. So the Gherkin evidence says that states' rights is actually an indict of the status quo and the shift that Congress is making towards, and the courts are making towards viewing federalism through the model of dual as opposed to cooperative federalism. It's important. It is important to make a distinction in this debate, and I think that we should make this very clear now between dual and cooperative federalism. You asked me a question, which is how is the structure of states' rights redeemable? Our argument is not that states' rights are good.
Allow the implementation of standard ground laws, which
Our Gherkin evidence indicates that as a whole, states are more likely to enact progressive policies. Also, it shifts to a focus on rights.
Define progressive.
The Gherkin and Jarvinium evidence were also very clear on how cooperative federalist structures.
Define progressive.
We would say progressive is like leftist social movements that create more equality for people, that create greater equality. They're not perfect solutions, however, they're a step in the right direction.
The Jarvinium evidence.
Okay, and why should black and red bodies give into this idea that there is some future that is attainable for them?
So we would say that there's always a way for improvement as long as there is life. Connor, do you want to expand on this?
Yeah, I think that a lot of...
Actually, I don't want you to expand on this idea. You just made the argument that there's always improvement as long as there is life. Our argument isn't that death is not a real thing. My question is,
so this will obviously be answered in the
happening?
2AC when you read your critique against us. So we can start this now, but
sure. We think that there is at many levels the possibility that the quality and experience of people in democracies can improve. We also think that there's a uniqueness question in this debate.
You think because the states have power, people aren't going to kill or like...
Obviously, it's not a perfect solution. However, Democrat backsliding is net worse. It could cause literal Nazis to get power in New York. That's a cat's problem.
Are you kidding? The Nazis are in power now. Trump is literally the president
Exactly, and the Jarvinian evidence indicates that the only check against it is federal.
How did take into account a world post-Trump?
Jarvinian.
The Gherkin evidence is actually about Trump, and it says that when we enact cooperative federalist structures, it gives states and local jurisdictions.
Gherkin 17.
It's the 17 evidence.
It's the first card under
it's called we're about to see states' rights used defensively against Trump, and it is entirely about the way that states and localities have the power to check a fascist executive. I just got kicked off.
Speak up to the camera. I swear. You wouldn't be on, I just knew what shit.
Okay, I too just get
We get kicked off a lot. That's
It is one off case with solvency first, and then advantage one, advantage two.
sorry, it's not.
Scenario one, scenario two.
It's not. For some reason, Wi-Fi is giving out on me.
It's been like that all weekend.
Let me see. Sorry, I can't fix.
Try disconnecting everything.
You blame you, Nick.
Oh, there we go.
And UNLV.
It's true.
Okay, this is not working.
Do you want me to just look?
I'm trying.
Sometimes we have to like
Well, the problem is it's just not downloading. Save it in my Dropbox. I mean, if I can get it that way, that's good. If not, come on.
just save them this one. If not, I can watch it too. Oh, it just went. That's okay.
Alright, cool. I got it.
Cool. Everybody else ready?
Yep.
Government legislation for indigenous health services has been a continuous sham as long as the settler is in charge. Death will always be a result in the democratic process. Anderson 6. The social movements across the world resulted in the greater recognition of civil rights and indigenous people of the Pacific and settler states. The debates between indigenous people and settler institutions of various movements realign relations with this form of colonial power. Despite its recognition, there are continuing debates about indigenous rights in Australia. Government leaders made a clear opposition to policy frameworks
extinction doesn't stop Eric Garner, Trey Romont, or
Yeah.
Fantasy from dying.
Before cross-ex, I don't think the extinction impacts caused solar violence card was in the UNLV doc. Can I get that, please?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just not here.
Thanks.
The Dally 16 evidence?
Yeah, I believe so. It was the last card you read on solvency. I'll start cross-exes.
Wow, my that's really disservice.
Okay, so.
Okay. Let me just. Okay. You good?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. So my first question is: a judge stopped the Doppel pipeline because of environmental concerns before it could be built. Is that ethical? Yes or no?
No.
No.
No,
Why?
Nothing's ethical in the world of settler colonialism.
Nothing is ethical.
No.
I mean, we should also be looking to broader questions such as why was DAPL even allowed in the first place? Why did protests go on for so long? Why was
Okay,
people who
that's
protest
fine.
by natives met with water cannons?
I have another question. What is the end of the world?
We say one that the settler that's our Dally evidence that talks about how the settler can't understand the end of the world because they can never see outside of themselves. So, but two, we also think that it means listening to people that are on the periphery, what they have to say about love,
So
truth, and
we
justice,
listen
and
to
how the
people on the
democracy is able to
periphery.
work. We think that it is bringing an end to civil society.
So
as
what
we
do you
know
mean
it.
by bringing an end to civil society?
Like the United States would no longer exist. as
Okay,
it does.
how do you destroy the United States?
Well, we think one, all of your evidence indicates that the democracy is failing now. You also, one of your pieces of evidence talks about how
That's not relevant to my question. How do you destroy the United States?
right, we think that it's destroying itself.
It's
Like
destroying
right
itself.
now, your
also,
evidence saves it.
here's another answer. The reason is that civil society can only cohere itself by eliminating indigeneity in the first place. In order for the settler to indigenize themselves to the land, the ability for communities on the periphery to come together and have these discussions is something that civil society cannot understand
So,
because the only form to cohere
discussions-
itself is to eliminate those other ideologies.
Okay,
those
but how
other
does that prevent
smaller-
like the United States military from going in and destroying those discussions from happening per the example you gave about Doppel?
Right, we think that as long as the United States coheres itself as it does, then those things will always be allowed.
So
regardless of what we do.
how does the alt prevent that though?
So we don't. So the United
Right.
States no longer is able to cohere itself off the elimination of the other.
How? How does like indigenous groups having discussions?
The
prevent
only
the
reason
United
you can stand on this land right now is because you have physically displaced indigenous people. That's our argument. The inability for you to understand that specificity of what we're talking about is the reason why you continue to cohere yourself to this idea that there is settler redemption, the settler success, the
don't
settler
think that's
innocence that is
true. So-
possible.
So can the alt ever result in the app or solving any of our
Are we gonna go for a floating pick?
Yeah. No, for the pick. Cool.
No.
So how does the alt? I guess how does like so your first piece of evidence is all about how indigenous groups being given more rights is good but not enough. How does the
Right. We
alternative-
think that that card isn't saying is that given rights is good but not enough. We think that it's highlighting about how the U.S. is constantly always failing the native, like the other person. They are never actually fulfilling the promises that they're making.
Okay, so the U.S. is always failing. Awesome. Connor, do you have any questions or anything?
There's some drum.
Alright. Yeah, that's fine. There's 3 seconds left.
Take a breath.
No, send it.
And if your Wi-Fi isn't working,
I think it's back on. The order will be case, K, no surprises.
Connor, I know the sheet. Case in the order of solvency advantage.
Yeah, solvency advantage. Actually, no, it'll be the advantage, and then I'm just gonna line by line the 1 and C straight down, so there'll be like impact. There'll be impact gaming stuff at the top. Uh-huh. Oh, no, I didn't. It's sent, sorry. It's sent. Or it's sending. My internet's doing a thing where
Wait, say that order again.
yes. The 1AC, it will be the advantage, like impact debating at the top,
So just straight down with impact cap at the top.
Yeah, straight down, impact cap at the top. And then the K, obviously.
There it is.
Mm-hmm. That's well.
Oh, I haven't seen.
Everyone good? Take that as no. Is it sent? Are we good? Is anyone not good?
What's your document?
It's called 2ACV Washington EP. That's weird.
Forget it.
I can resend it if you want.
Later.
Alright. I'll take one more sip of water. Good. Hey. Democracy outweighs and turns against structurally the biggest check on conflict because leaders having electoral incentives not to fight wars and shared values mediate conflict prefer statistics to their examples. It's the most robust trend in international relations that's Corey and Kurlansnik, and the only alternative is to autocracy. You should frame this through the uniqueness of the debate. They materially make life worse for everyone, including indigenous peoples, and are more likely to engage in explicitly state-sponsored genocide. It turns out outweighs all of their impacts. It causes net more violence, but the plan avoids a bechuckling entrenched democracy. It gets modeled abroad. That's a glut core, and viewless evidence and extinction should outweigh. It's the most moral evil, and their disavowal of the risk only makes it more likely to wage it all. In 13, if the risk of extinction turned out to be smaller, shouldn't listen to complacent notes, same person with the risk of nuclear meltdown, this reaction is only 1,000. We're not going to worry when there's some risk of catastrophic outcome. We can't eliminate that risk, so we should do. So how about extinction be believed without painful deaths? There would be no future generation matter just as much as our generation of civilization began over 10,000 years ago, with remaining habitable for another billion years of species may survive for another extinction would be the end of an extraordinary revolution led to intelligent life and given us a potential to make greater progress if we fail to prevent our extinction. Will only opportunity to create a national common large number of generations living out human beings living rich and fulfilling lives and reaching the heights of mountain civilization that are beyond the limits of our imagination. Their impacts are all about material violence and suffering. Extinctions are worst possible incidents and biological death should outweigh. We promote life as the ultimate value, and utilitarian calculus has empirically solved interstate conflict. Focus on individual identity intensifies conflict, and liberal institutions can be returned. The alternative causes democratic backsliding. Go like in 16. Violence on a don't the intent of a God causes an invasion of an outnumbered babies. This shift towards this humanism is where life is better, and death, education better, nature health better, and this what we were seeing. Another factor is a change of value system towards humanism. There's always a temptation of backside norms are restraining force. There's been a great contributor to peaceful coexistence. There's all kind of institutional violence here. There's been a classic line institutional violence, corporal punishment, capital punishment, the criminalization of homosexuality, just name a few. Decline significantly. Utilitarian calculation if there is incentive regardless of morals to stop fighting this Soviet standards. We have said reversible. What we need to do is have confidence and give them because we made further progress. It's possible the experience of violence to an individual is irrelevant to always making we can deny global warming just because it's cold that we are asymmetrically influenced by singular events. I have a Germany politically correct these political wars come back to bite us. If people think the only way to say the truth is to be Trump, that is dangerous. The democracies are peaceful. The combination of dogma and identity clinch by intensifying any conflict because they foster an unwillingness to compromise. Fighters act in a completely different way than where earthly interests matter, and war turns all their structural violence framing Goldstein in one evidence that suggested casualty from the other way. War is not a product of capitalism, imperialism, generally other single cause war system. These and other injustices. If you want justice, work for peace, change an attitude toward war and military, maybe the most important way to reverse oppression and democracy. Solve structural violence better than the all. That was the case to make the alternative of violent autocracies. They slaughter millions of innocent people in ethnic genocides. It makes it try or die for the app. Now, that we are a treaty-breaking argument has zero warrant and is also absolutely false. We're not cruel optimism. Rather, we invest ourselves in the positive hope of reforming democracy to make it a little more stable every single day. It's a concrete political project we invest in, and the vagueness is co-option argument. Three answers. One, it doesn't matter because we don't need to win, that we provide care in order to win, that we solve the advantage. And the second argument is that the states would solve this. The GOP obviously can't co-opt it at the state level. The third argument is durable fiat solves. Now, the Kasparov doesn't say modeling argument. Kasparov is not an internal link to modeling. He's only an internal link to the way that U.S. democracy promotes stability abroad, which is but still something that's good at causes democratic follow-on in other countries. Rabkin evidence doesn't say modeling. It does say modeling the trends in constitutional, in American constitutional constitutionalism or something that other countries follow even if they don't want to admit it. We are the biggest possible constitutional trend. Super says that the outcome of the ACA debate will have a bigger effect on American constitutionalism than a constitutional amendment. The Trump advantage, in terms of the advantage argument, it doesn't termly structurally check Trump and his worst authoritarian tendencies. That's Gluck 17 and the 1AC. The federalism is territorialized argument. It's only a reason that we need federalism. It also contradicts Anderson, who says on the K that federalism would actually be good and that self-determination is good in the case of minority of indigenous rights. Now, the Hitler and Trump were elected arguments are answered by the Gherkin and Gluck 17 evidence on case that democracy can't collapse. It's just uniqueness for us, and the extinction is a settler move to innocent. It should outweigh ethicality, means that you have to vote half. The Gorlak evidence is very good on this and says that it empirically decreased violence and ending the world would cause American violence abroad. You should evaluate this outcome of the alternative gender in 16. As state retreat from preserving the good, creating a little order of society, we will lead to step rules involved in multilateral organization, economic openness, human rights, and foreign protection of the voters, good debate, and vote in the national security for the risk of trade rates, a little global order collapse, and after 1921, those supported engaged number of started creating organizations as a CFR to take up sectors will need to happen during the Trump administration. Court Trump world that is world is zero, politics is zero. Some now market there, and secession outweighs an impact. Turns the alternative American federalist structures are modeled around self-secession. They allow minority staff autonomy. The alternative is a bandage here for criminals and fascist microstate to acquire nuclear weapons and collapsing global order. The structure is not proliferation nation. That's a Volskakis evidence now. Framework the K. Framework names provide a competitive act for the using an institutional act to the status quo. It's a question of competing models don't allow for the K1 predictability. The top is about domestic policy and the negative spills based on everything from individuals. Rejection of structures, IPA biases, and negative text education. That link turns attaining to his roots of 1AC and play ignoring implementation of ideology. Moots all of our offense. At worst, we get away the plan against K3 fatalism has taken over, but although has taken hold, but runs a risk of total fascist takeover. We need a politics of scale on issues like healthcare through a coalition of politics of role experimentation that solve war and climate colony in 17. Role experience help recover our tax assumptions and orientation, collective action, recumulation of such minor action counters. Scared Jeff to allow Trump to become normalized. We need to join the small scale larger politics as forming which causes a new regional assemblage. Now, such assemblages coalesce and operate horizontally. Constituencies could mobilize to organize general strikes, putting pressure on states and corporations from inside and outside. At the same time, election war victories can be signed. But if the right wing gains control of all branches of government, you can run the severe risk of a fascist takeover. The ability to respond to dilemma of electoral politics is expanded beyond it, but not to eliminate it. Multilateralism is good in itself and generates the best mode of resistance support. Must include folding egalitarian projects into those noble drives to polarization. Might include taking radical action to respond to the Anthropocene before it generates war. The pluralism must eliminate class inequality and gains are possible. Especially in the area of Trump, who brings its apples and egg example as an app example, and multiple other instances prove legal resistance is good. Noise cat 1126. We must look contradict realities of devastation and resilience in our mindset. Gains are limited, but there are still gains. Indigenous claims of preventing corporation from exploiting natural resources. New Zealand Maori claims that the Trump state drive to privatize fishery and hydroelectric power as Trump progresses to take power, changes the calculus across the world. The reader knows that the United States is built on stolen lands. This is too imprecise to help us predict the trajectory of a global political economy. The indigenous people in the left must fully understand the ways precise ways that emerging system will dispossess indigenous communities. The Army Corps of Engineers halted Apple's progress had not been for thousands of people. Apple would have been business as usual. Apple was just one chapter in March story in 2015. Obama executed Keystone and Bridge held plans for the Sandpiper Pipeline in North Dakota. Tar sands busted. The opposition made investors uneasy. The fourth way will harness the power of indigenous people because violating pressure points beyond the workplace to oppose and transform undemocratic system. Unions, control workers, and the collective force of resistance, helping drive a cost for developers and project laborers. Indigenous nations that use their standing to advocate for viable alternatives in the United States. People work with democratically elected officials to advance bills like the Safe Flat Act, remain neutrals to perpetuate a long history of colonialization, to remain neutral to lose a valuable, organized, and powerful ally. Now, Anderson. The patent evidence votes nay. It concludes the scientific votes half. It concludes scientific categorization is not the source of colonization, but rather the privatization of care. Establishing access would solve that. Patent 11. Change the symbols of this to the patient office of the ability and responsibility to change the word patient to the ability to colonize medicine will require change of power. The ability of science and medicine to take and study disease, not the source of power to colonize. The power stems from the ability of the provider or withhold his knowledge for financial gain. Medicine is a right. It's the most intelligent minds in the world. What would happen if they turn their research to hunger, poverty, and homelessness? More research and action would result in critical changes. We see momentous challenges. Changes in the coaches, citizens, treatment, just to focus on strengthening resources. I would act as social support. This could require an actual change of focus on medicine. Do not propose discrediting medicine. I do not make this statement a possibility change. I firmly believe that change must urgently need to begin with the medicine itself and those who practice. We must become fully engaged in the work of decolonization to become a reality. The most urgent change is America must emphatically believe that the belief that healthcare is right for all healthcare has become one of the largest businesses today. The universities adopt the ideology of the corporation and are less concerned about how they might educate students in the practice of governance and political importance of democratic values and the necessity of using knowledge to address a challenge of public life. I won't pretend that I will have the answer to the enormity of the situation. We may not finishing a test or reducing payment. Now that we free to take no part. It is this obligation which motivates me. If we take the framework of post-colonialism to an action of decolonization, there is a chance for change. And the Anderson evidence votes out says. All right, Anderson votes out. The bottom of it says that you should do policy alt. Revolution is bad, that their out is bad, secessionism impact turns at their move towards destroying the world, sends a signal to secessionist groups worldwide and multiplies the fracture of nations everywhere into thousands of fascist nuclear armed states with no incentive not to use their weapons. It also turns itself overthrowing the government and lets neo-Nazis establish new confederacy and perpetuates massive and settler violence. Only federal structures or governments allow organizations check their own worst impulses. That's Darwinium and now the AF also solves cooperative federalism, explodes avenues of political participation and forces elite follow on to settler policies. Curriculum 14. Local size minorities use that power to remedy inequality, promote civil rights. Federalism comes close to hitting the spot where normative attractiveness and practical seriousness mean. If you think the solution for the country to radically distribute wealth or politic in a genuinely deliberative fashion, you can stop the centralization of the visibility of center it allows a real life instantiation of their ideas. When democracy's outliers can decide by deciding in the governance decision, advocacy takes a different form. The platform matters. Marriage, immigration, UHC, marijuana shifts did not come about because advocates have more opportunity to speak in the reporters are paying attention to these parties. Decentralization facilitates agenda setting for decentralization. This centers a chance to force a majority to engage local platforms, connect the centers of powerful networks that fuel policy making. Federalism gives the center to another person which criticize the powerful one of that centers of decision making, national lobbies, or Republicans, etc. Status gives the center advantages, those in power bring more attention to the loyal opposition that disloyal one to be able to dissent from the inside, demonstrated willingness to get in the game rather than driven from the sadness. Federalism creates connected critic. Federalism provides robust scaffolding for partisan battles and permutation. Do both. Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
First, I guess, let's start so you say AF solves through cooperative models. When has the United States had a cooperative democracy?
Well, the entire thesis of the 1AC is that we do not have cooperative
Have we
federalism
no,
now.
the question is, has the United States ever had a cooperative federalism in the existence of the United States?
Nah.
Has any country ever had cooperative federalism?
Sure, there are plenty of countries that
What
have
countries?
cooperative federalism. We would say that many European countries have cooperative federalist structures where we haven't identified specific countries. Like, I can't point them out to you.
That's okay. That's okay.
It really doesn't matter.
You're
Specifically
right.
in the
Education,
United
not
States.
important.
It's important.
Another
Federalism
question.
is pretty lit.
Yeah, so another question that I have is you say that, okay, actually I have a question about your framework. How
Yeah.
come
Hook me up.
Michael, not a body that's able to access the government, actually outside of this debate, why does that mean that he needs to be implementing political policies in order to be competitive in this round?
First off, we never specify what an
You
institutional
say
actor is.
institutional actor.
Yeah, we just say that should be an
What's an
institution.
institutional actor?
An institutional actor is an institution that makes societal change. Individuals or abstract movements to the end of the world without specifying the actor in the 1NC does not allow us to.
So if Michael was like, I'm the actor. And
It does not
Michael
allow us
is
to
the
set up
actor,
offense against the actor in the 2AC, which is key to set up offense for the rest of the debate. You must specify it in the 1NC,
why couldn't?
or you do not get the alternative because it is very vague.
Okay.
No, it's not big. but-
We've also said that, like, role experiments and playing as the state or other large stakeholders in governance
the
decisions.
idea that I should have to roleplay as the state. What
We
is-
don't say
how
you
is that
have to
beneficial?
roleplay as the state. There are tons of different institutions that you could
What are those
roleplay as.
institutions that are specifically
The
related?
ACLU is just one example. Institutions that are standing up to things like DAPL, the Dakota Sands Pipeline,
So
all of
how-
those
So the
institutions.
communities we talk about in the alternative are those institutions.
We would say that you must specify the institution.
Okay.
Okay,
And it
you
must
got
be
it.
competitive with the plan.
The next question I have is, how does the alt cause backsliding?
How does the alt cause backsliding? You have said that you want to end the world as we know it. We have said that the world as we know it is one in which democracy is by and large causing peace abroad. A move towards ending that world, you
Why
have
is the United States
you
in the
have
middle?
read a
Wait,
link.
I have a question.
The
Why is the
1NC
United States in the Middle East right now? Why are we
The
fighting wars in
1NC
Middle
link
East?
that you read said that democracy is a link and that eliminating democracy would be good.
Why are we in the United? Why is the United States in the Middle East?
Why is the United? I
What
don't
are our
understand
motivations
how.
to be in the Middle
I
East?
do not understand how that is relevant to this debate. And we
Is it
haven't
relevant
identified
because
why
we're
we are in the Middle East.
because the United
We're-
States wanted to promote
Our model of
democracy
democracy
there.
promotion is based off of other countries.
It's also
modeling
based off
it,
of
not
modeling.
U.S. intervention.
Take a pro.
That's very clear. Oh my God, Miles, you're the
Sorry.
best.
Enjoy. Good luck.
Oh, Miles, you got it.
401.
Used. So yeah, 559. Yep.
So they put like the arguments against the alternative and the extinction stuff on the case. So I'll be answering that. I'll just tell you when I'm going there. That's the deal.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'll just it's gonna start with the K, the framework stuff, and then I'll just keep the case page around because they've made the extinction arguments there and the all fails arguments on case.
Is there an overview that you would recommend a separate sheet of paper for? Or?
No, I just
Okay,
like to
start.
flow down.
Oh, is there a dot also?
Is there
Are there cards?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, those.
Let's
Let's see what the cards are.
let's get Wi-Fi. Thanks.
Did you get kicked off? Did I get kicked off?
I didn't get.
No.
Should we just
You have the
Are you sure this is the right dot?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
It's just the same ones from.
Yeah.
I can't download it. Can you please put it in there?
Yeah.
Can you not download it either?
No, I just have to do stuff. Okay, just let me save this in Dropbox so Connor can access it. Okay, it's been saved in Dropbox.
My computer. Welcome to the Okay.
Okay.
All good?
Yeah.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The 1AC is tethered to the redemption of the settler state through the implementation of a state-based health insurance system in order to preserve settler democracy, despite the fact that the state is about to implode on itself due to a lack of federalism. They have attached their advocacy to the residents as resuscitation of the white settlers' ability to live and make democratic decisions, but have failed to grapple the fact that the continuation of settlement necessitates the ontological obliteration of indigenous bodies in order to make way for the creation of governmentality and civil society. They are a revolutionary form of democracy because of focus on popular opinion. They will always ignore the voices on periphery with no safeguards. For example, Hitler and Trump were democratically elected, who promoted and promoted the processes of authorization in order to eliminate conceived threats to the healthy social body. Status quo politics actively performs cultural and epistemic genocide, which strips natives of their very humanity and subjects the other to a lack of rights, rape, exploitation, slavery, murder, as well as the rejection of indigenous healing strategies and holistic health models. Cultural destruction is an internal into the legitimization of physical annihilation, which is ingrained in the way society is positioned against indigenous populations to displacement. The only ethical question we should answer is whether or not we should allow the continuation of settler colonial politics. First, they say we should have the first is their framework argument, but criticisms are best for education because the 1AC is more than 15 seconds of the plan text, which proves their epistemic justifications and assumptions are important debate about. Second is the role of the judges over the team that best combats settler colonial futurity and violence, and rhetoric shapes reality. Materiality first assumes that we should always act before we think. If we want a risk of a link that proves their epistemic focal point is bankrupt, it is a reason that criticism is a prerequisite to challenge dominant modes of settler knowledge, and fiat isn't real. They have to defend the method and epistemology they use to arrive at their policy proposal, affirming their starting points, and is an affirmation of settler forms of knowledge production and their political engagement. Good art to reproduce settler violence. Colonized bodies will always be excluded from public deliberation due to European forms of knowledge holding all legitimacy. Voting nay is necessary to open up dialogical space for the other. Their better democracy merely re-entrenches itself with the same biases and violence that results in displacement, solar and aid. Elevation to European categories and concepts of reason, race, science, and stability, universal set understood upon the backbone of imperial governance and technologies of order human kinds into racial taxonomy, science as a measure of man used as distinct from the passions, sentient, myths as subservient to rationality, constitute epistemic supremacy that have guided institutions that colonialism is produced, and the principles of truth production. Those institutions serve forms of knowledge production were cited in implicit frames in the unstated dogma of what counted as knowledge itself. Imperial power has been seen to rest on the language of reason on each European regime of truth, adapted epistemic clarity, epistemic considerations, and either transcendent or abstract. They are the colonial world and squarely in a colonial governance entailed the constant assessing and recapping of what colonial agents could know, what they could, and what and how they can know what epistemic information spread is possible to think about the constellation of concepts that are in question, what people are assumed to know about their worlds, and how they disagree with them, and treating epistemology as a navigational strategy focused on security of a regime to the ongoing pursuit of intelligibility. Now go to the case page because they make a lot of framing arguments here. First, they say always and turn the stage because leaders don't want to fight, but this is the problem, is that their entire argument is tied to this idea of the settler state securitizing itself, but for the ability for them to securitize themselves is rooted in the elimination of the native in order for them to indigenize themselves to the land in the first place. Second is the prioritization of extinction. First fails to come to terms with the idea that the other was not meant for this world. Those on the outside of anti-indigenous modernity are ontologically marked as dispensable due to their very essence of being otherized, which affirms a lack of being that breeds invisibility and processes of calculation. That's Malton Auditories. This is why Dapple was rerouted away from right neighborhoods to sacred native land, and native women were subjected to forced sterilization as a form of medical testing instead of white women. You should prefer the one entity's focus on epistemology and ontology because the way we understand and orient ourselves to the world frames how we orient ourselves towards structural violence, reason for our impact, the death, the war. Their impact is fabricated through the desire for settlers to secure their future, which demands the creation of new threats, which leads to serious policy failure. Now the next argument is that biological death should outweigh. Our argument isn't that we should move away from focuses on biological death, but rather that epistemic and ontological supremacy of the settler state allows for the biological death of red and black people in the first place. You should look at the fact that only natives occupy 2% of the population, which means that every war that they can come up with, every fabrication of a securitized threat will always be seen as more permissible and more important than native life in the first place, which means that you should prefer the criticism. There now is a few link arguments. The 1AC is actively excluded indigenous reproduction. Actually, no. The 1AC actively excludes indigenous healing practices from being covered by state NHI because conversation of what gets covered in the first place is done by rich white men in positions of power, i.e. Congress and state legislators, which means the plan will always be ineffective. Turns out democracy arguments because approved democracy will only be used as a process of ethnic cleansing. This creates a single entity with knowledge of the entire population, which is the biopolitical machinery necessary to maintain state control over red bodies. Through that, national health insurance schemes are guided by biases and goals of the state implementing them, which means health just becomes another tool of settler colonial control. That's Anderson. 2 examples. South Africa during the apartheid era used the healthcare policies as part of its effort to maintain the dominance of its white population. Mexico used health services in its counterinsurgency effort to suppress the Zapatista rebellion. Next is the Brazzicling. They imposed Western idea of health and medical care onto indigenous people by forcing them to give into the system that actively excludes their health practices. That perpetuates the idea that indigeneity is a disability to be cured. Their desire to save civil society reproduces the conditions that result in the notion of a flawed body that must be eliminated in order to ensure the health of a collective social body. Transforms the colonial condition into a medical one that legitimizes violence in hospitals and reproduces the killing indifference. The idea that natives do not deserve quality care or access to care. Their national health care insurance doesn't resolve quality of care, only access, which means that there's a solvency deficit to the app. And in their Port Right 13 evidence makes the argument that democratic states need to maintain security by controlling territory, which proves all of our arguments about how their reproduction of civil society in the first place, which will always result in the death of readiness. The 1AC didn't care about access to care until it implicated the lives of the lives of settlers. Their next argument is that there's a fascist takeover. This is more line by line. But they said versus fascist takeover, that that's already the status quo. Trump is already in power. Your model debate produced that shit, which means that you should probably vote negative in order to allow for the alternative to create new discussions that are unintelligible to the settler state. They say gains are possible. This noise cat evidence is a form of racial liberalism. But there's going to be a key distinction because it's a question of slow versus fast death. Does the native die? Does the native die now, or do they die in a couple of years? It's not a question of whether, but the answer will always be that the native does die. Also, DAPL goes negative. I made this argument above it, specifically about how DAPL was rerouted through white neighborhoods because natives, was rerouted through white neighborhoods to native lands because natives are not seen as human. Now, their next argument is that Patton concludes affirmative, but no, Patton actually says that we need decolonization first, otherwise the body will always be seen as territory, and that continues and furthers racial and class biases, which means that it turns the case because that doesn't resolve the access or quality of care in the first place. Their next argument is that Anderson goes app. No, Anderson actually says there are continued disparities that are not resolved because of the fact that there's a state biases against indigeneity in the first place. Also, this evidence that shows institutions are always ineffective also concludes that presents a challenge that we say the settler state will never be able to overcome. It's not a reason why you should vote affirmative, but rather a reason why you should vote for the alternative. The next argument is that the app solves co-optism, but then it explodes and allows for avenues of political participation. But then our argument is that political participation is an impossibility because of the fact that civil society must cohere itself by limiting indigenous knowledge, which is why indigenous forms of epistemology are seen as treasonous to the American state and is seen as illegitimate because of the fact that it would not allow for the settler to cohere themselves as an arbiter of civility, truth, and knowing. Now, their next argument is actually go back to the case because they made a lot of arguments. They say the alternative leads to democratic backsliding, but this assumes that that the end of the world is a form of anarchy, but that's not our argument. Even then, if that's what they're trying to go for, then then this is an independent turn to them as a team, because it implements the idea that the natives are savage and worthy of biopolitical control. Even then, natives had governments before settlement, which proves that there will be an ability for them to have conversations that are necessary in order to produce more effective forms of governance in the first place. They say war turns structural violence. I think this argument doesn't matter if I win a key framing question, is specifically because of the fact that because natives will never be seen as legitimate or necessary because they are 2% of the population. 2% of the population. Now they say democracy solves structural violence. I asked a specific question in cross-examination: was that what happened to Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, Janice Lee, these red and black bodies who were killed in a democratic society? That means that there is no future. They are only a move to settler innocence. Now, go to the permutation. No coherent explanation of what a combination of the plan takes in the end of the world looks like without either being impossible, intrinsic, or time frame permutation, which are all illegitimate voting issue because of fairness and ground can always add on the next advocacy makes the app moving target impossible today, and permanent settler replacement faith in protecting the Western model. Actually, not this one. Coalitional politics leads to the absorption of ultimately racial indigenous knowledge, which legitimizes settler colonialism. Tugging Gassavida Fernandez. And 13, white settler becoming any researchers with the contention over colonization, reason the politics of curriculum studies of future established in terms of the absorption of any critiques that those challenge white supremacy and the replacement of anyone who dares speak against ongoing colonization. The settler project will replace the Sudanese people curriculum has continued to absorb silence and replace the non-white other perpetuating white supremacy. Settlerhood curriculum continues to enforce colonization, racism, white curriculum to occupy spaces, absorbing knowledge, balancing and displacing bodies out of the margins, intervention behind the sideline. We incorporate in ways that reinterrupt settler colonialism in the South future. Also, they get a permutation in the 1AR because they just said primitive mode. Sorry, not sorry.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to talk about the 1NC for a minute. You read this piece of Razak evidence that says that propping up the democratic state is a form of colonial violence. Does the alternative resolve propping up the democratic state? Does the alternative prop up the state?
Yeah, that'll be in the 1NR.
Wait, does the alt prop up the state?
Wait,
Say
no,
yes,
no, it doesn't prop up the
No,
state.
you don't prop up the state. So you say that the
Not
state.
the state as you think of it.
You say state collapse good.
Well, we
what
say
what
we don't say
multilateral institutions are
we
used to
say
allow
that the 1AC was a resuscitation of the collapse of the state. You said it was going to collapse, and you saved it. I said that was bad.
Okay, so you're saying that the collapse of the state is good.
Not necessarily. I just
So then
I just
if
don't
it's-
think we should redeem settler structures.
So if we shouldn't redeem settler structures, what do we do?
We vote negative. Yes.
So after we vote, like, what does that mean other than don't redeem settler structures?
Yeah, we're not going to prescribe the detailed blueprint of what the end of the world, what the world after the end of the world looks like, because that would be another form of biopolitical control that implements the idea that natives are savage and they need to be controlled. And
Are
we need to tell them what to
there
do.
multilateral institutions?
If the peoples on the periphery want them, yeah. Like,
So if the people's on the periphery. Oh, speaking of that, actually, you made this argument at the bottom of the 2NC that's like natives won't be seen as legitimate because they're only 2% of the population. How does the alt solve that?
because it puts an emphasis on those discussions that they are
Wait, so
actively excluded
Are
from.
you saying that putting an emphasis on discussions of decoloniality would resolve the issue of settler
I
violence?
think it's a 10 times better project than what you do. Yes.
So you think that emphasizing those discussions is sufficient to solve violence,
Right.
and you will defend this?
Becky will make arguments in the 1NR about how it's a question of starting points.
Excellent. And those discussions are a sufficient starting
I
point.
mean,
I just
I
wanna
don't know
be
why
clear
you
about
keep
this.
asking questions about the alternative. The alternative will be in the 1NR.
Okay, but I'm asking you a question about the alternative because I'm curious about it. and that's
Right,
what
I
we're
didn't talk
processing.
about the alternative. That wasn't my speech.
But
You
it was in
still
the
need to
1NC,
defend it.
and
I
you're
can
gonna-
defend it, but
You're gonna have to go for it in the 2NR. Answer my questions. That's fine.
I think I have
How
sufficient
did
reasons
how
to
did
back on
how did
assumption.
our model of debate cause Trump?
Huh?
How did policy debate cause Trump?
Because you literally sat there and were like, if you don't debate institutions versus institutions, that's going to kill education. We're not going to be able to like combat bad structures in the world.
And that
L
caused
fucking L, because this shit has been going on for so long.
that.
And it reproduced the idea that the settlers should instantiate themselves with the arbiter's ability truth. And no,
Wait, so
it
saying-
instantiated Trump. It gave legitimacy to him. The KKK came out of hiding.
Saying
Come on, y'all.
saying that we should vote in elections for not fascists gave us Trump.
You two gave us Trump. These judges gave us Trump. White men and white women gave us Trump.
Okay.
Sorry, not sorry.
White people gave you Trump, not our model of debate.
Yo.
Let's go.
Disagree.
All right, that's fine.
We're gonna see okay.
5:50 is your meeting. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. I was like, I thought we had 550 before, but yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
I had y'all at like 5:59.
Yeah. It was my bad. I was
No,
looking at it.
I feel you on the math thing.
So it's gonna be the K, and then
We're like a specific.
5T. I mean the K's.
So K is just like straight down continuing, or any.
Yep, just continuing.
Okay.
It's gonna be the alternative.
Okay.
On case you can do stuff on solvency. No, I didn't send anything. Everybody good here?
Mhm.
The alternative is an orientation Case. We don't need to win the K in order to win the way around. They don't solve anything, which means you can vote on presumption. Not only can you vote on a presumption, but you can vote on cruel optimism, which turns their any arguments that they make about why they help people on the periphery or why promote work or anything like that, because they don't actually do anything. They are just good liberal politics, which always sacrifices the minorities when it comes down to in order to save themselves. This happens when they are specifically like extinction first. We need to focus on extinction before we can focus on anything. The daily evidence specifically indicts about their world and understanding of extinction, because it will always be something that happens anytime a minority is talked about. In order for the settler to cohere themselves, they have to be have a never-ending expanding violence. Conceded. I already have that. They also conceded that they need to win 100% solvency of their impacts, otherwise it is cruel optimism. The only argument that they have to this is that cruel optimism is outweighed by case, but if they don't win 100% of their impacts, and that means that you probably shouldn't give them the case, and that is the real, you shouldn't give them that argument anyways. It does make sense. Top level about whether there's a presumption, all of their stuff about democracy is trash. When they don't highlight specific wars, they just say Russia, North Korea, and China. This isn't specific and doesn't discuss what is happening in these countries and why the war would be caused in any capacity, or how democracy fundamentally looks different, or what these countries are specifically talking about. They also read 0 pieces of evidence that assumes Trump all of this guns and their solvency, because the countries they highlight don't want to work with Trump in the first place. The Capital 17 evidence doesn't talk about, none of their evidence even talks about modeling. Any evidence is labeled as modeling just as the countries look better, but it doesn't specifically highlight the countries that they say are problematic in the first place. The Super 14 evidence says that if the ACA succeeds, then the impacts will happen. Well, guess what? The ACA succeeded, and we're way past that now, which means that we should have already seen all of their impacts, and they have no way to be able to solve that. The STAR 16 evidence is an answer by durable fiat. The reality is the funding budget discussion happens every year, which means that this is a form of cruel optimism, and not something that they are able to solve back for. They also say that the state is able to solve, that the states are also able to solve for this, but IHS is state funded, and every single year it's underfunded because the states take too long to be able to go through with this, which also is the reason why that it will just end up causing more harm to people that are on the periphery, because then the states just get to decide, which means that in some states that's going to be far worse, i.e. states like Texas, or places that are already more red states and already don't, like literally Charlottesville is having Unite the Right discussions. I don't understand why they're going to start helping people on the periphery, or why people all of a sudden get a voice. Also, they have no reason about why fiat is good or should be used. Fiat isn't rewarded, which means that we aren't even making better policies, and when that means that it links to the K, because they are just always a form of cruel optimism, and they aren't actually going to actually help anybody. And when people are like, hey, this actually doesn't help me in any manner, they just say shut up, and extinction is going to end up happening. They also considered our little 5 piece of evidence, which says that true political accountability and freedom is only possible when we abandon the claim that democracy stops violence and accept the true democracy candidate. i.e. democracy does lead to violence, and just because you are good, you are democratic, it doesn't mean that you're good. This turns a whole out, because they aren't changing any structural issues, and at the end of the world is able to solve this because we listen to people, what people on the periphery have to say about democracy and structural political issues. Also, they can't solve their second scenario about minorities don't have control here. They have no example or clear articulation about how they're able to solve back, or what other countries model, or how that modeling even looks like. On the democracy path, they have no, but they did not. They conceded Hitler and Trump were both elected by democracy. Literally, Hitler caused ethnic violence. I don't understand how they can solve either one of their impacts in this, in a world where literally all of their impacts are happening in a democracy. This is also settler move to innocence, because they quit to pretend that they are good abroad and allow for more militarism because they don't fit our models. Literally, the conflict in the Middle East is because the U.S. went in under the guise of creating more democracy. The U.S. isn't a hero, but rather a colonialist state that needs to be stopped. Schedler 5 evidence provides an example to this. Also, the next turn to both advantages they concede, and the reason why they lose framework is they conceded Daly 16 evidence. Extinction is just used as rhetorical tropes to divert attention away from racial colonization and reinscribe the settler to the innocence of settler role. Doesn't want to be the issue, because that is how it's able to cohere itself. It requires bodies to be disposed of in order to continue expansion. Also, autocracy is not the only other option. We think that democracies can exist outside of the U.S., and ending the U.S. as a whole doesn't necessarily mean that natives wouldn't have a democracy after, or the democracy wouldn't come in another kind of form. We just think that the U.S. being the leader of democracy is bad, especially when it coheres itself as a settler state, and that's the only way that it's able to do that. Gorland 16, they don't win. Why democracy is good, or who models. No clear scenario. Vote on presumption.
Okay. I'm gonna go to the bathroom before questions.
I'll just like,
Can you?
I'm gonna get these French fries.
I asked if you had French fries and you said no. Dude.
I didn't even know these were here. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I was thinking about my feeling. like Five Guys fries? No. Five Guys does have better fries. Oh, let's not do that.
Oh, thank you. I'm gonna be a parking pass you came around. Okay. Yeah, I sent you email, but then I never caught up with anyone to do anything about it.
Just out of curiosity, where's the camera? Oh, okay. I was like, didn't
Can
see
you
it.
even see me?
Yeah, it's got the angle from about that shoulder all the way to like the little past that laptop stand, so like you're smaller, but you're in the corner. So that's how I could do it.
I'm
It
happy
moves.
with that.
Yeah. It's just where I sat. Yeah, it moves where it's like this. I can't put it far back enough to do it even, so just go with the angles the way to do it.
Nice.
Can you put them online?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll put the link in college policy debate when I upload it.
Tell them I'm still learning.
We have a lot of newer debaters watch it too, so it's a lot of people who.
No, I've actually watched some of your
Oh yeah.
videos.
Okay. Same. Yeah. People watch it. I don't really get to know all the people who watch it, but
No,
I'm glad that people use it.
I watch Harvard.
Chris Fresno.
Yeah.
I watch those videos religiously, and videos of Big Sad.
Yeah, it's like, this year I'm not traveling as much as many national tournaments, so it's like my video collection is much smaller this year. I think this is the first one that I've actually got it.
Yeah.
The Harvard versus Fresno round was why I actually whipped up the blockade before this tournament.
Oh yeah.
I was like, we'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
Can you give me my
What?
Just like slide it this way.
Please speak.
Yep. Yeah. Well, this is why.
Do you want us to wait for your partner to get back to start that? 'Cause I think he gets to.
You can start.
Okay.
Ooh.
She doesn't really.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you're cool with it, then it's fine.
We'll do-
Okay. We have 10 minutes.
Wait for the other judge.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Next go. That's not right.
I'm gonna eat some fries.
Yeah, need some fries. Do you want the other thing or two?
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry I didn't change the talk name to DW.
Totally fine.
That's fine.
I was like, why am I gonna pretend right now?
Yeah.
They probably already saw them.
I've actually done worse. I made a 1NC for a tournament specifically for one team, but then didn't hit them. My partner messed up. We changed the doc name, but I didn't hit the save button, so we sent it out. The 1NC we were going to hit against winning team to the judge, who was the coach of that team.
She sent my entire 2NC, blocks and everything, every little analytic thing. It was just this was supposed to be a surprise. They weren't supposed to know this was coming.
Well, that was brutal. Okay.
I mean, we were going to
Are we waiting for the other judge to start
ready?
prep?
We could just start.
But you're prepping, not speaking.
Yeah, prepping.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're gonna
okay.
prep.
Make sure you're timing this
Yeah.
out. Right
I'm tired. Yeah.
Okay.
an example of Democrat practices. Stop prep. 342. There's one card there, maybe which I will send out.
What'd you say? 342? Is that left?
Left. Let me reconnect to Wi-Fi.
be right
Wi-Fi.
there. So I was.
That means I just got kicked off of Wi-Fi.
I appreciate you talking out actually.
Katie.
Yeah.
Or-
It does matter. I've been in enough debates where someone else forgets, and so it's like one of the judges don't do it. Yeah. Good job.
Okay, I'm back.
That's kind of what I think.
I just sent out the one card. So, not entirely sure how y'all flow this, so I'm just gonna do a really good job at signposting on our scooching. Most generically, my order is going to be case with the answers to the extinction framing stuff. I switched over when links were discussed. And then I'll do that part of the debate, then the case proper debate from the 1NR. Then I'll answer I flowed the top of the 2 and C on a separate sheet of paper, so I'll do that, then K, and I'll signpost where I'm going on K. Yeah, doc the card has been sent. Okay, it says it sent, so I did a reply all. So,
Yeah, I'm still waiting.
Same.
yeah,
I'll try sending it out again.
I couldn't send docs last round,
You don't need that.
so
The code's not at all.
I'll hit the save button then. It's under a framework, it's the own. Control F Ellen.
Whatever, I'll just grab out my voice. Sorry about this. Did y'all get the card?
No. I'll turn my Wi-Fi off and then turn it back on.
No, I haven't gotten it either.
It's just something on my
Alright,
so then
I
it's
sent
you.
it.
It's me. It's no, it's actually definitely me. This happened last round too.
Like, it should appear in your inbox within the next 10 seconds. There you go.
Okay.
Okay, I have received that email. Is everyone good? Democracy outweighs as the biggest check used for statistics over their empirical analysis because besides the core right evidence fantastical on issues like the most robust statistical sets and concludes that democracies are less likely to do things like go to war and genocide their population refer to specificity, and then now the next thing about calculus the wage evidence fantastic and indicates that extinction is the worst ontological violence because there's no coming back from it, because there's no coming back from it. It's also the only moral, it's also a moral priority because it destroys an infinite number of future generations. We do not constitutional policy field prefers specific internal links. Biological death must come first because it can't come back from it. They say stats go as fast as that. Unique as for us, democracy is backsliding right now. Only a switch to a quadrilateral model can overcome. We're not saying they're savages, but seeing the political, which is net worse because it allows for literal neo-Nazis to take power, when it's literal neo-Nazis to take power and have no impact to world mess. The political change is possible. The core evidence indicates it's a good thing in the context of democratic norms. It also hit all because we were granted achievable goals because possible extinction claims are the best small housing wage evidence. We don't decrease democratic norms nor do we spread the place like Russia and China. It's a question of alliances between the US and the EU. Their evidence is not about working with Trump but other countries looking at our policies and modeling. That's the rapid evidence. The super evidence indicates a question of the fiscal model which the Republicans are trying to undo right now, which means this is the now next. All of their arguments about funding and unfunding are answered by the Berkeley evidence to the one I see indicates that states would have to fund under guardrails set by Congress and have to apply for fiscal viability. Democracy is good statistics prove it's better now than it's not intervening in the Middle East, even if past democratic modeling has been our interpretation is modeling non-semi now democratic leadership is good because it creates a stable international system. Now collapse of the global international order is net worse, allows the United States to go crusading like invading the milices so that can see address your argument from the 2ACK overview. I'm just going to extend the Gherkin 14 evidence here. It's fantastic. It indicates that we actually the app gives people on the periphery more power because it allows them to have greater power over government policies by creating more structures for them to work within, which means that we solve which means that the case solves the alternative in a better way because we integrate them into global democratic structure, which is not good now. The K proper, the bottom one analysis that says that all other democracies check. That's all uniqueness about violence in Australia, which still happens. A, it proves that they can solve because other democracies will continue to do the exact same thing slowly. B, it means that they collapse so much in democracy that they cause a massive switch to authoritarian violence globally. Now framework debate view, now framework the negative serve an opportunity cost to activate an institutional actor that specifying the win and see. None of their offense applies because the question of competing models with debate, and even if they win their models better, we should get the way to weigh the impacts of our app against the K perform model. One is predictability. Only archers as predictable limits on discussion. They open the door to discussion about whatever they want. This is proven by their role the judge claims, which shifts debate away from the focus of the the only fair role the judge is to decide who did the best debating. Second is moots the 1AC. It's all they shift the goalposts. It's a voter for fairness usually a reason to reject the team, and epistemology focuses if possible on avoids problem solving 0 and 2. Friends of epistemology has a sense of participatory expectative has a psychological weakness as not in mind that financial choice may provide the best account they can look to the future around the ponder which IR. Future for Morgan's reduction is the generality of empirical validity. There can only be one approach against this right feels back into a vicious circle right now. They say fiat is real, even if fiat is real, education is good. The 1AC super evidence indicates that hindered education about cooperative federalism is key for new democratic structures, and then the core also says we get fiat moots all of our offense. The patent evidence indicates that talking about government structures is key because we need to look at the policy consequences of outcomes of decolonial policy. They say we're settler balance. No, we're not. The Gherkin analysis answer that finally they have dropped the Conley evidence, which means it's pretty much game over. The all-righter capitalism on left front bullying less than momentum now to devastate healthcare and undermine the potential for resistance by rolling back voting right laws engagement. It's a sequencing question for more radical resistance later. Democracy outweighs the K, makes authoritarian backsliding, and now will cause diseases, water shortages, and lack of access that disproportionately hurt Native peoples. That's Connolly. Now the link debate, they should default to specificity. They do not have any specific links about cooperative federalism. They're all about NHI as geometries of a high threat trying to for any defense because we allow for integration more people into the decision-making process. Decide what health could look like. This is also true because we have 50 different plans for 50 different states, which means it's net better. Additionally, the noise cat evidence is the most comparative issue on evidence on the issue of near resistance places all their arguments in the context of Trump. You should refer over generics. Huge gains have been made by native and I'm going for the doppel example where it proves that resistance low construction spilled over to great masses from pipeline because of public opposition influence. The script on power relations, which proves that contingent agents that compensate failures are adjustable through legal change and resolve material balance. There should be prior questions because using theories to deny people real world gains is violent paternalism. Finally, none of their links apply as well because democracy is good. You should refer the core right evidence and the Kasparov evidence indicates that the out democratic norms, the actual Nazis are going to take power in Europe and reinstate slavery, which is net worse in terms of all their options, especially because the patent and the Anson evidence indicates that change is good and will cooperative. Finally, permutation do both stay double blind, especially the concept of the Gherkin evidence because the app, especially the concept of the Gherkin evidence and the continuing and the shoddy link analysis because the app allows for greater minority participation, allows for the groups on the periphery to form coalitions. They say theory, there's no reason to reject the team on theory. Now the alternative is turned by the session's impact because it caused the formation of fascist microstates and incentive to do things like genocide violence in order to maintain power, which means that the K causes more authoritarian governments, which causes all the violence that they indicate to happen on an even larger global scale.
Right.
and the K overview, then just straight down on the K?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, everyone good? Conceded little 5 evidence that says true political accountability and freedom is only possible when we abandon the claim that democracy stops violence and accept true democracy can decay, i.e. democracy does lead to violence, and just because you're democratic, it does not mean it is good. This turns a whole out because they aren't changing any structural issues. The end of the world stops if we listen to what the people have to say about democracy and structural political issues. They conceded the tally evidence for both species, which is why they lose the debate. There's zero offense from case in a world where extinction needs to be created in some form in order to save the settler. This is a tool used by the settler to keep conversations away from decolonization, i.e. their framework of extinction first. So that doesn't even have a scenario. They lose because it's about their education created. They have zero reasons about what democracy they save or why it is important. Hitler and Trump were both elected in democracies. Literally, Hitler caused ethnic violence. I have no idea how you solve it. They literally conceded this argument while them saying minorities have more of a voice. They don't have more of a voice because they were literally killed in the U.S. They make up 2%. They make up 2% of the population. Never, LOL, they're never heard, and they will always be outweighed. This is why you should prefer the affirmative. And this is a move to settle in. They get to pretend they are good about it and allow for more militarism because people don't fit our model. Literally, the conflict in the Middle East is because the U.S. went in under the guise of creating more democracy. The U.S. isn't here, but rather a colonial state that needs to be stopped, shot, and the Shutter 5 that excludes us, and the 1 AR is too late to finally start engaging with ourselves about cool options that they conceded coming out of the constructive speeches. They need to solve 100% of the app. Anything else is the reason why their politics should be rejected. They still haven't highlighted what what's happened or who or how these countries change their politics of what this actually looks like. No impact coming from case after the 1 AR. The 2 AR doesn't get to blow up. Also, no modeling any form. When is Russia, North Korea, China, North Korea? They are talking about. They aren't even looking to the U.S. in any fashion. Now go to the overview. They say first that the affirmative gives people on the periphery more power. I think we've already answered this argument, but you can cross by the solar evidence that indicates that the public deliberation is already mediated by Western rationalities in the first place, and that's always predicated on the idea that we must eliminate the native in order for the settler state to cohere itself, because it instantiates itself as the arbiter of civility, and truth and knowing. Now they say, now go to the criticism. On framework. No reason the neg has to be predictable. Also, 2 of their teams hit us and they had all of our cards and arguments coming to the surroundings. No abuse and doesn't mute the 1AC. The app is more than 50 seconds of the plan text, which means the assumptions are important to debate about. Now they conceded fiat isn't real. No articulation of why it is good means no new 2A arguments and links to our cool optimism impact, even if they win that using fiat as a tool to determine whether or not the plan should happen is good. That doesn't mean that 1, they have their hands on the lever of power to actuate insurance at a state level, or that 2, fiat itself is a good form of producing scholarship, especially when fiat has only ever been used to instantiate the success of the settler state. Reason for absolute considerations. We are first and foremost academics. Don't go for materialized form of epistemology, but that portrays the very idea of needing to think before we act. Otherwise, the continued reproduction of settler logical diminishing. You should always be suspect of their internal link to impact chains because they are rooted in forms of public deliberation that actively excludes colonized ways of understanding the world, i.e. indigenous healing strategies are always seen as unable to combat the spread of infectious diseases despite native society being decimated by the introduction of Western disease, as well as the idea that indigenous technologies medicine has gone on to shape the way that we approach medicinal practices to the very day. I'll answer their own evidence here, challenging dominant assumptions are necessary. Leaving them unquestioned is exactly why reformism and thinking before we act is insufficient, because it never challenges the structure and epistemologies that made that violence permissible in the first place. For instance, just because IHS provided NHI for natives as a form of reparations, it doesn't mean that there's been quality care, qualified physicians, or physicians who are without ethnic and class-based biases, which means that lower income and women of color will always get the worst forms of healthcare. No, this is why you should vote negative in order to endorse the end of the world. An orientation towards the end of the world opens up space for dialogue to actively reject settler epistemology, favor what the peoples on the periphery have to say about truth, justice, love, and health. There means will always be a question of what starting point 2 as a judge prioritizes. Prescribing a detailed proof would be another form of domination, which is what the 1NCs criticizes. You should prefer the skepticism provided by the alternative over their call for national health insurance, which is predicated on the expansion of settler future sovereignty. The end of the world allows for us to criticize how healthcare research is collected and produced, as well as how Western medical practices are insufficient at dealing with cultural understandings of the word. The first argument is that Patton is talking about policy, but Patton specifically talking about how we need to analyze policies in order to understand the way that they have screwed over populations in the past, which means that, and it also concludes that we need decolonization to be the starting point for politics in order to resolve these violences in the first place. The 1AC is tethered to the redemption of the settler state through the implementation of state-based health insurance systems in order to preserve settler democracy, despite the fact that the state is about to implode on itself due to a lack of federalism. They have attacked their advocacy through resuscitation of the white settlers' ability to live and make democratic decisions, but have failed to grapple with the fact that the continuation of settlement necessitates the ontological obliteration of indigenous bodies in order to make way for the creation of governmentality and civil society. You can classify the Hitler and Trump examples here. They were democratically elected, and they also promote processes of otherization. Proves that nothing's good about democracy. Status quo politics actively performs cultural and epistemic genocide, which strips natives of their very humanity and subjects the other to a lack of rights, rape, exploitation, and slavery. You should not view their impact. You should not weigh our impacts against each other, because you should prefer the negative. Because natives only occupy 2% of the population, which means that every war that they can conjure up will always be more important, even though they have no specific scenario. Now, their next argument is that we conceded the Connolly evidence, but no, we did not, because that Connolly evidence was talking about a total fascist takeover. But that's already the status quo. That was my argument about how politics has already been seeded, which means we should prefer the end of the world now. Next is noise cat, but their only warrant for this is the DAPL, but DAPL proves that demands on the state equal violence, which means that the alternative is better, because in DAPL they were met with water cannons, they were literally killed. Now their next argument is Nazis and reinstantiation of slavery. Now I think this is pretty problematic, because one, it assumes that slavery is something of the past, when in actuality is just another transformation. That's the point of settler colonialism. It allows itself to reconfigure itself. Now we'll go for the Razik. We're going for the Razik lead. The desire to save civil society reproduces the conditions that result in the notion of a flawed body that must be eliminated in order to ensure the health of the collective social body. This transforms the component condition to medical one that legitimizes violence. Now on the permutation, there's no articulation of the permutation in the choice, means they don't get new explanations of the when they are. I mean, offensive arguments against it in the 2 and C. Even then, you can extend the coalitional politics arguments. They only create a bunker for the USFG after the end of the world, which means that they allow it to save itself, but only means the USFG is allowed to create more settler violence.
What book is it? 250?
No, it's
346. Good. Yeah, I was gonna say thank you.
only case than the K.
Well, I don't know. I didn't. Yeah, it's the overview and then K proper. I didn't flow the overview on a separate sheet, so I just am gonna go straight down. I don't know if that's me or just the way this debate turned out. Yeah. Good. Before you think about voting affirmative, you should think about why you should not vote neg. The alternative results in Democratic backsliding, it turns it, and is a massive disab to the Alt-1AC. Razak is explicit, says that we are settler violence by saving the state from democracy's inevitable collapse and the status quo. That means that in order to win that the alternative does not link to the K, they have to win that they lead to or allow the collapse of democracy, which would should 100% flip your ballot out. They also had poor answers to the Dresner evidence, which said absent a strong civil society and international and domestic checks on Trump, he will fuck up other countries and go crusading to gain territory. No answer in the block means that you shouldn't give the 2NR any leeway here, and refusal to prop up democracy will result in backsliding. They have conceded the fundamental unionist question of the advantage, which ruins any hope of voting neg. Their Hitler and Trump examples are only reason the F is important, A, because they are examples of democratic backsliding. That was Katie's analysis in the 1AR, and B, because empowering local units of governance is the strongest check on a fascist executive. They conceded the Connolly evidence and the Gherkin evidence, and the 1AC is very conclusive on this question. It says that without cooperative federalism, Trump will have the unchecked ability to do whatever the fuck he wants to indigenous people and will invade other countries. It's true about fascists in other countries too, like Australia and Austria, which their Anderson evidence talks about. It's a reason they can't solve. Now, their impact framing arguments are absolutely untrue. They say extinction is a settler move to innocence and that we don't have a specific scenario. We do not need a specific scenario, but rather a robust defense of the liberal international order. We have said that it is the strongest check on explicitly state-sponsored genocide against indigenous people and is the only way that we can ever structurally resolve the impacts of the affirmative. They have conceded that fascist right-wing takeover is happening now, which means that if we move further towards abandoning politics, it will turn the alternative, because the neo-Nazis who are taking over the government now will have the unfettered fucking power to do what they want and reinstate things like slavery or as smallpox blankets, which is going to turn the critique. Now, the settler move to innocence argument is not true, and the Gorlak evidence is comparatively better. It cites statistical analyses that have shown that a move towards global humanism and presuming that all lives ought to be counted equally has statistically decreased inter- and intrastate violence. Their inability to line by line the warrants of this evidence means that you should vote F on impact framing. Now, the Trump and Hitler 2% of population arguments are just a reason cooperative federalism solves the critique, and it's also the move to settler innocence argument is just a reason we need strong international norms. Now, the no impact to case argument, yes, there's an impact. Backsliding and Nazis and a breakdown of norms were both in the 2A in the 1AR, and yes, they say no modeling, but yes, it's not about Russia or North Korea modeling, but rather about the United States having the ability to maintain strong alliances. What? Oh. The cruel optimism arguments are not impacted, and they were also answered in the 1AR. We are not cruel optimism, and they were answered in the 2AC. They just didn't flow it. We are not cruel optimism. We are a move towards a praxis of hope that allows us to engage in everyday projects that have actually achievable goals. If anything, they are cruel optimism because they believe that calling for an end to the world would solve that. Now, the affirmative also solves the entirety of the critique. I won't go for the permutation, but I'll still go for Gherkin. Voting F solves their impacts. Their explanation of alt solvency was that indigenous groups need to have discussions on the periphery, and that creating sites for those discussions would be sufficient to solve the alternative. The F gives them the power to influence the national political agenda and opens up the space in government for discussions of indigeneity to take place that influence national policy. Two warrants. One, decentralization. Cooperative federalism opens up lower levels of government and makes minority participation easier, allows them to control local policy. Elites will pay attention to these changes and engage, which shifts the national discussion to include indigenous viewpoints in national policy making. That's 2AC Gherkin. It line by lines all of their access arguments. Second is resistance.
federalism allows for minorities to challenge federal practices. The Fed doesn't have the resources to implement every policy. Will rely on states for implementation. The states can say no. It saps federal resources and forces the Fed to give in to the requests of localities. That's when I see Gherkin 17. It literally says that states' rights can be used to resist Trump's agenda. It turns all of their impacts. It gives minority groups the power to challenge the structures responsible for their repression and proves that the act reforms are good because we allow for greater political and social representation by forcing national policies to listen. The argument that we do not change the structure of democracy and that it always causes violence is only uniqueness for us because the evidence just says that backsliding can happen, and they have conceded that we change the way that democracy is structured. What?
Go up to framework.
Oh, framework. They conceded the goalpost disadd, which means that they can arbitrarily get out of their advocacy in the 2NC and the 2NR. They can change the way that the alternative is interpreted. It is proven by their arguments that they don't collapse the entire global order in the bloc in the 2NR. That means that we get to weigh the plan. The only other argument that they can get also means that they should have specified an institutional actor in the 1NC, and you shouldn't give them the alternative in the first place. Now, the only argument they can go for here is that fiat is not real and that we don't win, but Katie answered this in the 1A. There are two arguments. One is that our education is good. The patent and super evidence both answer this. They conceded that education about cooperative federalism is good because it solves all of their impacts and is a legitimate strategy for resisting colonial violence. And the patent evidence concludes that he says that we need to analyze the outcomes of policy in the context of decoloniality, which means if we win, that we solve some of the alternative. You should still vote F. Now, the argument, huh? What's up, Katie?
Nothing. Go.
Oh. Now the other reason we get fiat is that patent definitively concludes F. He says that we need to evaluate outcomes, which is just a reason you should vote F. But either way, they do not get the alternative because they did not answer the goalpost. He said now the Connolly evidence is total fascism. Now argument it's not already seated, and if the political is already seated, it's only a reason that you should vote F because we make the political easier to overtake. You should vote F to stop the Nazis from fucking up natives.